Black lung and silicosis have been diseases of the mining industry since minerals were first removed from the earth centuries ago. They are still diseases that exist among miners today. The information we have indicates that these diseases have not been eradicated despite the efforts of MSHA, miners, and mine operators. Unfortunately, new miners can go into a mine today and suffer the consequences of silicosis and pneumoconiosis if effective controls are not in place. While dust levels have come down and working conditions have improved, all of us involved in mining still have work to do. This film is part of MSHA's Education and Training Program, which complements our enforcement program. It will help us make certain that everyone knows the problem exists so that we can act together to prevent dust diseases from occurring. As we mine coal, minerals, sandstone, limestone, and cut-through rock, we create the dust that creates the disease. Only our daily efforts at each and every section and at each and every mine will ensure that miners are protected and that dust disease is no longer a miner's legacy. Why do we call dust the invisible enemy? Much of it you can't see, but it can harm you. Who's affected by the invisible enemy? Not just miners like you and me, but our families and communities as well.
It affects people on the outside of the mines as well as the people on the inside of the mines.
When you shower and it's in your nostrils, it's in your nose, it's in your ears, it's in your eyes, it's there. We don't have to be on coal run to think, well, there's dust. It's there all the time.
This visible dust is a nuisance and a hazard. But when it comes to dust, the saying, what you see is what you get, doesn't apply. With coal mine and silica dust, what you don't see is what really gets to you. Invisible dust is dangerous because you can breathe it deep into your lungs where it causes disease. Dust of this size is called respirable. The respirable dust particles are tiny, less than 10 microns in diameter. Compare that to a human hair, which is 40 to 50 microns in diameter. Both visible and invisible dust is produced by many operations in underground and surface coal mining. In underground mining, some important sources of dust are roof bolting, continuous miner, and shuttle cars. In longwall mining, the shearer, plow, and stage loader are the most common sources of visible and invisible dust. Surface mines have a variety of dust sources, including drilling and blasting. Loading and hauling produce dust from the operation of heavy equipment such as loaders, dozers, drag lines, and haul trucks. Dust on roadways and around stockpiles and loading operations is also often a problem. Does any of this look familiar to you? If it does, you may be at risk of contracting a dust-related disease. But how do you know if you really are at risk? If you work in dusty areas, you're at risk if the areas don't have adequate dust control measures, or if you work without adequate respiratory protection. We've talked about respirable particles of coal dust and silica. How do they do their dirty work? It might be helpful first to look at how our breathing or respiratory system works.
Basically, the respiratory system consists of nose, mouth, major airways like the trachea and the large breathing tubes, the bronchi. Those breathing tubes continue to branch into smaller and smaller divisions, and then you get into some areas where there begin to be small air sacs. They're very tiny, called alveoli. They're the smallest unit in the lung. And gradually it turns out that at the end almost everything is these small balloon-like structures. A lot of the large particles will stop at your nose and in the upper airways and along the tracheal and bronchial tree, and most of those while they may irritate the structures, they are removed. But when you get into very tiny particles, like 2 to 5 microns, very small, those particles are sufficiently small that they can actually enter into the small air sacs. Those particles are then usually engulfed by macrophages or phagocytic cells that are there to defend against infection and various other things. But if the load becomes too excessive and there's more dust than those macrophages can clear, then that dust can be deposited in local areas, frequently around the smallest breathing tube. And then they can set up a process that can lead to the accumulation of dust, which can either be like a solid little mass, or which can end up kind of destroying some of the surrounding lung tissue. And those two processes can lead to what's called co-workers pneumoconiosis.
How can miners' exposures to respirable dust be prevented or reduced? One of the major preventive measures we use in the mining industry is water, so the dust never gets into the air. This means it can't be breathed in.
We get a lot of dust off our shields when you pull them. Yeah. We still get some dust off of the stage loader and crusher a little bit every now and then, but that's kept down real good by water and the chemical agents.
Ventilation is another primary control measure. We all know the importance of bringing air into underground situations to dilute mine gases and to simply provide enough fresh air for breathing. Ventilation systems at the face also capture dust and move it away from the operator. Mine operators can install curtains to increase forward air velocity over the operator and prevent dust boil-back, or put passive barriers over the dust cloud at the longwall face, which separates the air into two separate splits. These controls are often specified as part of the ventilation plan, which is designed and approved for a specific mine and piece of equipment. These plans include requirements for things such as the quantity and velocity of the air current used to ventilate a mechanized mining unit, the number, type, and location of water sprays, the pressure and quantity of water delivered by the sprays, and additional devices such as dust collectors and scrubbers. To help ensure that the ventilation plan requirements are being followed, MSHA has a regulation requiring on-shift examinations of sections. The qualified person must specifically conduct an exam to ensure compliance with the respirable dust control parameters of the mine ventilation plan. The exam looks at things such as air quantities and velocities, water pressures and flow rates, leaks in the water delivery system, section ventilation, and control device placement, and any other dust suppression measures required by the ventilation plan.
Each miner is trained on the ventilation plan, which is posted on the bulletin board at our mine. Each year during annual refresher training, each miner the ventilation plan is reviewed with that miner or all the miners at our mine. And in that plan, it shows the water pressures that's required on each miner, the number of sprays on each miner, the number of sprays and water pressure on the shear, the number of water sprays at our crushers, at our dumping points, and also the dust collection system that we have on our bolters.
We also can wet materials as they are cut and removed to keep dust from getting into the air. Water is used at crushers and transfer points, and we can add water sprays to reduce major dust sources in outby areas. In longwall operations, you'll see a shearer clearer that relies on the air-moving qualities of normal water sprays to confine the dust cloud and move it away from the operator. These engineering controls are important ways to keep dust from getting into the air, or at least reduce dust exposures. Other controls might isolate the miner from a hazard. For example, use remote controls and locate the operator upwind of the dust source. This is commonly used in continuous and longwall mining systems. On conventional and continuous mining sections, you can mine in seam so that top and bottom are not taken, thus reducing potential silica exposure. In surface operations, install enclosed equipment cabs, or when buying new equipment, ensure that cabs are well sealed with positive pressure and have high efficiency filtration systems. Finally, rewater haul roads to keep dust down. Miners face exposure to dust in the mine environment that may require the use of respiratory protection. Respirators are the least preferred method of controlling exposures to respirable dust because they do nothing to lower the levels of the dust in the workplace air. While they may provide added protection, respirators must be worn properly to be effective. Reducing exposures is the priority of any pneumoconiosis prevention program. But medical screening can be used for early detection of respiratory disease. Such a program could include information for miners on the screening program, pre-placement lung function tests and chest x-rays, lung function tests every 1 to 3 years after starting work in a mine, chest x-rays every 3 to 5 years after starting work in a mine for exposed miners, medical and work history questionnaires, and a respiratory symptom questionnaire. Remember that with continued exposure to respirable dust, after 30 years, your lungs may look like this. Miners with impaired lung function or X-ray evidence of pneumoconiosis who work underground or in surface areas of underground mines must be told of their rights to transfer to a less dusty area of the mine with no loss of pay.
I firmly believe that there has been significant improvement in underground coal mines in terms of dust control. I do not believe it's perfect, and I do not believe it's been good enough. Some of the surface mining operations have not improved because initially the surface mining people weren't even included in the act. But now they know that in certain occupations in surface mining, there is a very high risk of silicosis. In fact, a few weeks ago, on one day, I saw two men, 140 and 141, with fewer than 20 years of surface mine drillers who had category B complicated pneumoconiosis, which is almost as bad as you can get, and who did have significant impairment. They were young men. They will not survive many years.
The guys just, I don't know if they thought about black lung. I never did, to be quite honest with you. I never thought about it. If I had, I might have been more cautious. At 35 years of age with 2 small children and telling someone that you can't work anymore, I mean, that's quite a blow. And you wondering, how am I going to support my family? How are we going to eat?
What else can we do? MSHA provides a hotline number that anyone can call with questions about the accuracy of dust sampling or the effectiveness of the dust control program in a specific mine. If you have concerns about exposures at your location, call, write, or fax us, and we will make an inspection to ensure that a high quality and effective dust control program is in place and that dust levels are low enough to protect you and your fellow miners.